Hey everybody, this is Miss Ramsey again, here to give you your daily math lesson for April 22nd. We are still working with measurement, except we're going to take it a step further now, and we're actually going to learn how to convert them. And hopefully you've heard of the word convert, means to change. So you can change like kiloliters into liters, you can change milligrams into grams, and things like that. Okay, so that's what we're going to learn today is how to convert our units of measurement. Okay, so our ICAN for the day is I can convert units of measurement in the metric system. All right, so let's read that again. I can convert units of measurement in the metric system. So we're going to be focusing on this word convert. And I told you that convert means to change, changing it from one thing into another. And then we're also going to focus on this part about the metric system. And remember, metric system is not used in the United States. We use something called the customary system, but in other parts of the world, they do use the metric system. And remember that the metric system includes three things. You have grams, that measures mass, which is similar to weight. You have liters, that measures liquid, or we call it capacity. And then we have meters that are used to measure distance. Okay, so those are our three that we're going to call base units. Okay, now the next thing we're going to talk about are some prefixes. We've already talked about two of the prefixes, kilo, which hopefully you remember is the really big one, and then you have milli, which is the super tiny one. Okay, so we're going to add some more prefixes to our list. So we're going to start with the biggest one, which I've already told you is kilo. Okay, but now we have this new prefix called hecto. Okay, so we have kilo, hecto, then we have deca, and then we have this next one called base. And what I mean by base is that's going to be where gram would go. That might be where you see liter, or that might be where you see meter. Okay, so kilo, hecto, deca, base. Then we have deci. Then we have centi. And then finally milli, which is the little one. Okay, so we've already talked about how kilo is worth 1,000. And we said that milli is worth 1/1,000th. So that's super, super tiny. That's only one piece out of 1,000. Okay? So we're going to kind of treat this like a place value chart. When we think of place value charts, we have ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, and then it keeps getting bigger. And if you remember, it keeps getting bigger times 10, because every time you move, one time it would be times 10, another time it would be times 100. We talked about that with place value. But if we go to kilo and then to hecto, hecto is going to be 10 times smaller, so hecto means 100. Okay? Then you go deca, it gets 10 times smaller than hecto, so it's worth 10. And then we have base, which if it was 10 times smaller, it's only going to be worth 1. Okay? Then we have deci. It's going to get even smaller because the farther you go down, the smaller it gets. Deci is worth 1/10, and centi is worth 1/100th. So when you see these prefixes, you need to know that kilo is 1,000, hecto 100, deca 10, base is worth 1, deci is 1/10, centi is 1/100th, and milli is 1/1,000th. So what you can do is you can take these words in the base, like let's say gram. Well, if I put the prefix kilo in front of gram, that would give me kilogram. I could put the prefix hecto in front of liter, and I can have hectoliter. I could put deca, I could put that prefix in front of meter, and that would make decameter, okay? Same thing with deci, centi, and milli. I could have a decigram, I could have a centiliter, and I could have a millimeter. So these are just our prefixes that you will see at the beginning of the words, okay? So, you have to memorize this chart, and so it's going to be kind of silly, but the way to help you remember the order of these is by remembering the phrase King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk. And you may say, what? King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk? That's silly. He didn't really die that way. This is just an easy way to help you remember the order. So if you can remember King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk, the first letter in King is K. That's going to stand for kilo. Henry, the first letter is H. That's going to stand for hecto. Died is going to remind you that D is deca. And then the B stands for your base. Drinking would stand for deci. Chocolate would stand for centi. And then milk is going to stand for milli. Okay? The only hard part is you have two D's here. You have a D right here and a D right here. You just have to remember that deca is bigger than deci. Those are the only two that start with the same letter, so you'll just have to memorize those. Deca is bigger than deci. Okay? So let's remember our phrase, King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk. Okay? So I'm going to erase all this, and now we're going to practice how in the world we can use that chart to help us convert in different units. Okay? So if I remember King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk, all I need to do is write the letters. King, so K, Henry, H, died would be deca, and I might want to write deca since I have two that start with a D. King Henry died by drinking, and this is our other D, so I'm going to write deci. King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk. Okay? So, now we're going to ask ourselves, how in the world can we use this chart to help us convert? Well, let's see. Let's say that I had 1,000 liters, and I want to know how many milliliters that is. Okay? So here's how I start. I take the number that I'm given, and I'm going to write 1,000. All right, so now we're going to go back to some decimals because we should know that if it's a whole number that the decimal goes at the end. So if your number does not have a decimal, you need to give it a decimal by putting the decimal at the very end. Okay? So I have my number with my decimal at the end, and I know that I'm starting at liters. Well, if I look at my chart, this is kilo, hecto, deca, base, deci, centi, and milli. So nowhere on my chart do I see an L. That's because it's part of our base. Remember, the base is liter, meter, or gram. Okay? So since I'm starting at the base, I'm going to put a little dot underneath my base. Okay? And then I have to ask myself, where am I going? Well, I'm going to milliliters. So I'm going to see how many jumps do I have to get to milli. Well, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 places, and I went to the right. So 3 places to the right. I'm going to do the same thing with my decimal. 1, 2, 3. And all of these little spaces, I'm going to give it a 0. Okay? So if I put my answer down, 1,000 liters is actually worth 1 million milliliters. 1 million. Now ask yourself, why is it going to take 1 million milliliters? That's because milliliters are super, super tiny. They're only worth about 5 drops of water. So it's going to take a lot more milliliters than it will liters because they're super, super tiny. Okay? So now I'm going to leave my chart. I'm going to leave my chart, and this time I'm going to go from kilograms. I'm going to say I have 5 kilograms, and I want to change it into grams. Okay, so I write my number. It's 5. 5 is a whole number, so where's your decimal going to go? At the end. Okay. All right, and then you ask yourself, where am I starting? I'm starting at kilograms, so kilogram goes with the K. I'm going to put a dot right here. And I'm going to ask myself, where am I going? Well, the G stands for grams. Okay, so I look for a G. I don't see a G. That's because gram is part of my base. Okay, so I got to get from kilo to the base. So I'm going to count how many places over I need to move. 1, 2, 3 places to the right. So I'm going to do that here. You start the decimal and you go 1, 2, 3 to the right. And I fill in these spaces with zeros. So this tells me that 5 kilograms is equal to 5,000 grams. Okay? All right, we're going to do one more. Leave our chart, erase our jumps, and we'll do one more. Okay? Now I'm going to start with a number that already has a decimal in it. Let's say I had 1 and 25 hundredths, and that is, we're going to say decimeter. Okay? And I want to change those decimeters into, let's say, meters. Okay, so I start with my number 1 and 25 hundredths, and since this number already has a decimal in it, you don't need to worry about putting 1. Okay, so now I'm going to go to decimeter. Okay, decimeter a lot of times is written with a C so that you can tell the difference between deci and deca. But if I start at decimeter, I'm going to put a dot right here, and then I ask myself, where am I moving to? I'm moving to meters. Now be careful, because this stands for meters. It does not stand for milli. Okay, so don't get confused with that. This stands for meters. So ask myself, where is meters? Well, meters is not milli. Meters is actually right here at the base. So I only have to go 1 place to the left this time. So you take your decimal and you move it 1 place to the left. So now the decimal is in front of the 1. So you have decimal 1, 2, 5. But if you remember, if you have a decimal in the front, you never want to leave it alone. You want to put a placeholder in front of it. So if I read this, 1 and 25 hundredths decimeters are equal to 125 thousandths of a meter. Okay? So make sure that you're using this chart, putting a dot, figuring out if you're moving to the left or the right, and then that tells you how many places you move the decimal. Okay? Make sure you go on Seesaw, and if you need to rewatch this video, then you can, because this is brand new, and so we've probably never heard of most of these before. Okay? All right, ask your teacher if you have any questions. See you tomorrow.